So why does God allow suffering? This is a question that comes up oftentimes when we're talking with people who are grieving, just not understanding. Why do I have to go through suffering? If God is such a loving God, why does there have to be some suffering involved with our life? And I think it's an understandable question as we may be going through our grief. And what I often share with them is from the book of Hebrews. And I'm not going to say that I fully understand, what the Lord does, what God does, His wisdom, what He knows is so far above what we know. So it's not that we're going to understand everything. This is a big part of even the believer's walk, is that we're supposed to lean not on our own understanding. We have to trust the one who does. But in the book of Hebrews kind of gives at least me a little bit of a hint that there's a scripture that says, learn He obedience by the things which He suffered. This is talking about Jesus, Yeshua, Christ. And it's not so much what He learned, but just that He learned because of His suffering. And even as we go through suffering, we all have something that we can learn as we go through suffering. That's why even as part of our program, we say growing through grief. Even as we're going through grief, we should be also learning and growing as we go through this process. So there is something to learn even as we endure, even as we experience suffering in life. And secondly, what I say to people is that we really don't know the end. So we don't know what is the result of what we may be going through right now, which maybe right now it is something that is a suffering period or a suffering time. But we don't know, maybe a day or a weeks or a couple months from now, our suffering is going to, we'll start to see why our suffering had to occur, and maybe there's something good that comes forth as a result of it. This actually reminds me of my favorite scripture, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to His purpose. And we may not know in the middle of our suffering what that is, but there's something that can result in good. Look at the story of Joseph from the Bible. He's a perfect example. He didn't know why he went through the different things they went through, from being thrown into the pit, then into the prison, and all that he had to endure from his family and then those that were there. But it wasn't until later on they said that, what was meant for evil, really the Lord was orchestrating that for not only His good, but really all of their good, because He was able to save so many people because He went through that suffering. So us, again, we may not know why we go through the suffering, but just trust that there is still something that can come about from this. There's still something that we can learn from this. There's still a result that we just don't realize yet. And trust that our loving Father, He is still, orchestrating this, even though we may go through suffering. And I'll say one more thing, even in reference, because this is such a big topic, because a lot of people have this question. And that is, suffering is not something that we should be surprised about, especially as believers. Because the Bible, especially in the New Testament, talks so much about, how we're going to have challenges, we're going to have troubles. So if we have this expectation that even our walk with the Lord is going to be just a, joyful skip down the road, that's not a real expectation. And that's not even like reading what's in the Word. It tells us we're going to have trials, we're going to have tribulations, we're going to have trouble. We're going to grieve. If Jesus Yeshua grieved, then we too will grieve. And I even said this, that it's also potentially that the Christian, the believer, the one who has accepted Christ and has embraced being part of the family of the Most High God, we may actually go through more suffering than others. You know why? Because we are supposed to love and establish relationships more so than other people. All right, we're instructed to love our brothers, our neighbors, our enemies. We're supposed to love more. So we should have more union with people where there's going to be times that we're going to grieve. That might not be what we want to hear, but it's the reality. If we're called to love more, this is how people are going to know that we're His disciples. If we're instructed to love more, that means there's going to be even more opportunities for grief and mourning when people are no longer here. So again, this is some of the responses, I'll say, that I've shared with people in regards to suffering. And just hopefully, even just hearing some of this gives you, I don't know if it's some hope or just a little bit better understanding of why we actually have suffering.